And so as I had discussed, as we were setting up, we were basically going to be going over the Buddha's first discourse, his first sermon. This is a bit of context. This is given to the 5 monks who trained with him before he set off on his own for enlightenment. They were all ascetics. They practiced various forms of self-denial, various forms of self-torture, it could fairly easily be said. And the Buddha tried that for a while, and it really wasn't working, so he went off and did his own thing, and attained enlightenment. And when he attained enlightenment, he came back and showed these guys, and they were naturally kind of skeptical. He said, okay, here's what I figured out. And somehow it managed to work. The first one, the first of the 5, at hearing that sermon, the sermon, he immediately grasped what was supposed to be done, went off and did it. So this is the Buddha saying, this is how you do it. And, oh, imagine that, he did it. So, but we'll give the Buddha time to speak for himself, shall we? Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Varanasi in the deer park in Isipatana. There the Blessed One addressed the monks of the group of 5 thus. Monks, these 2 extremes should not be followed by one who has gone forth into homelessness, aka monastic life. What 2? The pursuit of sensual happiness and sensual pleasures, which is low, vulgar, the way of worldlings, ignoble, unbeneficial. And the pursuit of self-mortification, which is painful, ignoble, unbeneficial. Without veering toward either of these extremes, the Tathagata has awakened to the middle way, which gives rise to vision, which gives rise to knowledge, and leads to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. And of course, we are reading from the Thai side of the house, or from the Pali side of the house, so the readings may be a little bit different than you're used to. And what monks is the middle way awakened to by the Tathagata? It is this noble eightfold path, that is, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. This, monks, is that middle way awakened to by the Tathagata, which gives rise to vision, which gives rise to knowledge, and leads to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to Nibbana. Now this, monks, is the noble truth of suffering. Birth is suffering. Aging is suffering. Illness is suffering. Death is suffering. Union with what is displeasing is suffering. Separation from what is pleasing is suffering. Not to get what one wants is suffering. In brief, the 5 aggregates subject to clinging are suffering. Now this, monks, is the noble truth of the origin of suffering. It is this craving that leads to the craving that he talked about in the clinging portion above. It is this craving that leads to renewed existence, accompanied by delight and lust, seeking delight here and there, that is, craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, craving for extermination. Now this, monks, is the noble truth of the cessation of suffering. It is the remainderless fading away and cessation of that same craving, the giving up and relinquishing of it, freedom from it, non-attachment. Now this, monks, is the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. It is this noble eightfold path, that is, right view and so forth, until right concentration. This is the noble truth of suffering. Monks, thus, monks, in regard to things unheard before, there arose in me vision, knowledge, wisdom, penetration, and light. This noble truth of suffering is to be fully understood. Thus, monks, in regard to things unheard before, there arose in me vision, knowledge, wisdom, penetration, and light. This noble truth of suffering has been fully understood. Thus, monks, in regard to things unheard before, there arose in me vision, knowledge, wisdom, penetration, and light. This is the noble truth of the origin of suffering. Thus, monks, in regard to things unheard before, there arose in me vision, knowledge, wisdom, penetration, and light. This noble truth of the origin of suffering is to be abandoned. Thus, monks, in regard to things unheard before, there arose in me vision, knowledge, wisdom, penetration, and light. This noble truth of the origin of suffering has been abandoned. Thus, monks, in regard to things unheard before, there arose in me vision, knowledge, wisdom, penetration, and light. This is the noble truth of the cessation of suffering. Thus, monks, in regard to things unheard before, there arose in me vision, knowledge, wisdom, penetration, and light. This noble truth of the cessation of suffering is to be realized. Thus, monks, in regard to things unheard before, there arose in me vision, knowledge, wisdom, penetration, and light. This noble truth of the cessation of suffering has been realized. Thus, monks, in regard to things unheard before, there arose in me vision, knowledge, wisdom, penetration, and light. This is the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering. Thus, monks, in regard to things unheard before, there arose in me vision, knowledge, wisdom, penetration, and light. This noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering is to be developed. Thus, monks, in regard to things unheard before, there arose in me vision, knowledge, wisdom, penetration, and light. This noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering has been developed. Thus, monks, in regard to things unheard before, there arose in me vision, knowledge, wisdom, penetration, and light. So long, monks, as my knowledge and vision of these four noble truths, as they really are in their 3 phases and 12 aspects, was not thoroughly purified in this way, I did not claim to have awakened to the unsurpassed perfect enlightenment in this world, with its devas and maras brahman, in this population with its ascetics and brahmins, its devas and humans. But when my knowledge and vision of these four noble truths, as they really are in their 3 phases and 12 aspects, was thoroughly purified in this way, then I claim to have awakened to the unsurpassed perfect enlightenment in this world, with its devas, mara, and brahman, with its population, in this population with its ascetics and brahmins, its devas and humans. The knowledge and vision arose in me. Unshakable is the liberation of my mind. This is my last birth. There is no more renewed existence. This is what the Blessed One said. Elated, the group of monks, the monks of the group of 5 delighted in the Blessed One's statement. And while this discourse was being spoken, there arose in Venerable Dhamma, the dust-free, stainless vision of the Dhamma. Whatever is subject to origination is all subject to cessation. And when the wheel of Dhamma had been set in motion by the Blessed One, the earth-dwelling devas raised a cry, "At Varanasi, in the deer park at Isipatana, this unsurpassed wheel of the Dhamma has been set in motion by the Blessed One, which cannot be stopped by any ascetic or Brahmin, or Deva, or Mara, or Brahma, or by anyone in the world." Having heard the cry of the earth-dwelling devas, the devas of the realm of the 4 great kings raised a cry at Varanasi, and this continues exactly the same as we go on. Having heard the cry of the devas of the realm of the 4 great kings, the Tavatimsa devas, and then the Yama devas, and then the Tushta devas, and then the devas who delight in creating, and the devas who wield power over others' creations, and the devas of Brahma's company all raised a cry. At Varanasi, in the deer park of Isipatana, this unsurpassed wheel of the Dhamma has been set in motion by the Blessed One, which cannot be stopped by any ascetic or Brahmin or Deva or Mara or Brahma, or by anyone in the world. Thus, at that moment, at that instant, at that second, the cry spread as far as the Brahman world, and in this 10,000-fold world system shook, quaked, and trembled, and an immeasurable great radiance surpassing the divine majesty of the devas appeared in the world. Then the Blessed One uttered this inspired utterance. Kondanya has indeed understood. Kondanya has indeed understood. In this way, the Venerable Kondanya acquired the name Anya Kondanya. Kondanya, who has understood. So, the other pages I included because they talk about the Four Noble Truths from the Mahayana's perspective. They are from the Surangama Sutra and the Vimalakirti Sutra. Vimalakirti being a personal favorite of mine simply because it's a layperson teaching bodhisattvas how to bodhisattva. Good times. But I chose each of those passages to kind of, because they kind of play off of each other, they show a slightly different version of, or slightly different vision of how the Four Noble Truths unfold. All right. So, really, all I wanted to go into with what the Buddha is saying here is we talk about his audience and the monk who figured it out on the spot, right? The other 4 figured it out shortly thereafter, but what we see here is we see the Buddha laying out in detail the Four Noble Truths, how they are to be developed, that they are to be developed, and that they are essentially, once they are developed, they are to be set aside, right? Because you don't get attached to them. You use them, they're tools. The Four Noble Truths are tools that we can use to develop ourselves, to become better people, to really see through to the matter, to the true nature of things, the suchness, as we call it, the tathata, right? So these are to be developed, right? We're to follow the Eightfold Noble Path and to develop it. We're to use that in our day-to-day life as we go about it, because that will give us a measure of peace. It will also give us a measure of insight. It will give us a measure of wisdom that we can look at and say, you know what? That's not helpful. This is helpful. I'm going to do this instead of what's not. I'm going to do what is helpful instead of what's not, right? And because we have that capacity within us, because the Buddha didn't lay out that this is only subject to specific people, that this is something that we can all do. This is something that every single one of us has the capacity to do. We have the capacity to develop this Eightfold Noble Path. And most of these things, I mean, if we're looking at it really honestly, most of these things would not be something that you couldn't do in other faiths. Most of these things are things that I believe most spiritual teachers from most traditions would say, yeah, that's a great idea, go for it. Or, yeah, that's a great idea. We're also doing it in this way, right? You can kind of see similar things, right? Because all of the main ways that we're looking at it, there's nothing in there that is specific to one tradition. It's not saying you must worship just the Buddha this way. This is saying if you live your life according to right view, right intention, right speech, right action, if you do the right things, if you use speech rightly, if you live the right way, if you make the right effort, and that one is key, right? If you have the right mindfulness, if you have the right concentration, mindfulness here being, we could probably also translate it as meditation or prayer. If you practice that the right way, you should be able to get a glimpse of the truth just as it is, without any filter, just as it is. And because we have that capacity, we need to start using it. We need to put that into practice. We need to do this, because as the Buddha may have gotten to his last life, right? He may have ended the continual chain or the continual cycle that we call samsara. He may have liberated himself from that. Most of us haven't. Let's just be honest here. Most of us haven't made it that far yet, right? We're probably going to have another few cycles around the cycle, right? We're going to go around the cycle a few more times, probably, right? But we have the capacity in this lifetime, right now, right here and right now, to practice this, right? To practice what the Buddha said will lead us to the goal. We have that capacity in this lifetime, right here. If we're not making use of it, we are wasting our lives. We are wasting our time, and that is not what we need to be doing. We need to be doing what the Buddha is saying and following this Eightfold Noble Path, right? Because we know why. The other three Noble Truths tell us why, right? Although I would beg to differ with the translation of dukkha as suffering. It doesn't quite mean that, right? Dukkha, literally, so the noble truth of suffering should be more along the lines of the noble truth of unsatisfactoriness, which I realize the word is unwieldy. It really is. It's a much better translation. It's just nobody's going to remember that word. Unsatisfactoriness. Try saying that a bunch of times. Yeah, it grates on the ears real fast. So this noble truth of dukkha, right? There is this suffering, or there is this unsatisfactoriness, which the Buddha a lot of times likened to the wheel on a cart, which is a little bit off balance, right? It's not built right. So maybe it wasn't perfectly circular. Maybe it was just mostly circular. And when at one point where it's not circular and it's always going to thump, 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 it'll drive you batty, right? be the same thing in your car if your wheel is off balance and it's shaking, right, as you're going down the freeway, and you have to sit there holding the wheel because the car is shaking. It's unsatisfactory. It's totally not, it'd be really irritating to have that experience, right? And that's what he's talking about with different, right? That's what he's talking about with suffering. So, there is this unsatisfactory quality, right? There is a cause for this unsatisfactory thing, which is our craving, right? Our craving to always want, or to always seek, right? And that can be everything from, well, it can be any of the passions of this world. It's there. And that's why we suffer, because we want. So what do we do about it? Is there a way to get past that? Yeah. That's the third noble truth. There is a way past this. You can get past it. How do you do that? By living the Eightfold Path, by following the Eightfold Path that the Buddha laid out and said, you know what? This is how you live. If you're doing this, you get there. You get to the goal. Right? So, we have that. The Buddha laid it out nice and clear for us. We have that ability, we have that teaching to follow. Why shouldn't we? Alright, I'm going to leave it at that. So for all my Dhamma boots who are watching on YouTube, don't leave a sermon topic in the comments like usual. In this case, just tell me what you think of the Buddha's teaching and how you interpret it, right? And we will see you next time.